right. Well, good evening, brothers. And welcome everyone that is joining us online, literally across the country, there in Virginia and here in Nebraska. We are excited that you all are back this year for another Holy Week of reflection and meditating on the this final week of ministry of Jesus leading up to the cross. And we are super excited to be back with my friend and my brother, Pastor Marvin Gilliam of the Mount Carmel Baptist Church there in Richmond, Virginia. I, of course, am Jonathan Chapman. I have the wonderful honor and pleasure of serving as the pastor of Church on Purpose here in Omaha, Nebraska. And this is now an annual tradition. We'll see if we go for 3 next year. But we had the opportunity to get together last year for a week of discussion and dialogue, and it was amazingly impactful. And so we're looking forward to this amazing week, getting together again each night this week at 7:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Central Time for 45 minutes to an hour of discussion and dialogue around the supporting cast of characters from the Holy Week narrative as we look at Jesus's journey to the cross. And so I'm going to pass it over to my friend and my brother Marvin to introduce our guest tonight, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Cool. Hey, out there, everybody. We are just super excited to be back again this year. And as Pastor Jonathan shared, man, this was such a fruitful time last year. And tonight we're excited about jumping in and starting these conversations again from a different perspective. So many different angles that we could take the Holy Week from. And so hopefully these moments provide us with good reflection, good dialogue as we attempt to make our way towards Calvary once again this year, and of course towards the empty tomb. So we're delighted tonight to have with us, first from Omaha, Nebraska, Pastor Dwayne Hawkins, who is the pastor of the Antioch Baptist Church, and we're so grateful. He's a returning panelist. We're grateful for his presence with us tonight, and we know he's going to add some great things to the conversation. And then we're excited to welcome Reverend Pierre Greene from right here in Richmond, Virginia, my friend and my brother, currently serves at the Fifth Street Baptist Church, and so we're grateful for him and for his presence. And again, even though this is his first time on this panel with us, I know because I know him that he's going to have some great insights to share. So we're excited to hop into this conversation tonight as we talk about. If I had to title this particular conversation, I would probably title it "What About Your Friends?" Because we're talking about Martha and Mary and Lazarus and their relationship with Jesus, and particularly as he leads into Holy Week, his interactions with them through his ministry, but particularly this week. So there we go, ready to jump in and get started.
Let's jump in then.
Right.
So just kind of initial thoughts. We know that of course Mary, Martha, and Lazarus hold a very special place in Jesus's life, even before we get to his week of Passion. And so just kind of beginning with the elements of that relationship that kind of stick out to you.
We'll let our panelists hop in first and give us our guests tonight hop in first and give us some perspective, and we'll jump in, get the conversation rolling.
Well, the one of the first thoughts that comes to my mind about the relationship that Jesus had with this family was how the Bible speaks to the love that he had, and how he was willing to display it, not only in his thoughts but in his emotion.
Mm-hmm.
When the text said that Jesus wept. It's just brothers on the panel tonight, and boy, what an amazing example that he models for us in our earthly relationships about showing our emotion for the people that we love. So I'll stop right there and let somebody else.
What jumped out to me was the women. How Mary and Martha were there. They were in the position of service from the beginning. And I think about our churches, for example. We have so many women that do so much work, but rarely get mentioned or rarely get the recognition. So to see that these two sisters, Martha and Mary, the impact that they had on Jesus' ministry, that was eye-opening to me. Like, wow, they were there the whole time,
No, I agree. I think both of those are absolutely phenomenal points and perspectives, to consider and kind of to think about. That's and I had to go past the Hawkins, like we see Jesus kind of as a steady individual kind of throughout, I think, the Gospels, but he does have these moments of intense emotional expression, right? We see, of course, it's Holy Monday, so we see him in the temple where he's, kind of flipping tape. Not kind of. He's he's flipping over tables. But just prior to that, excuse me, just prior to that, as as Pastor Hawkins alluded to, we have that powerful verse in John chapter 11, 11:35. Jesus wept, and how simple, but yet how power-packed. I remember hearing, matter of fact, I think it was Pastor Gray preached Jesus wept before, and just like super unpacked it in such a meaningful way about like what that moment means as he is crying about the death of his friend Lazarus, but also grieving alongside Mary and Martha as they are in that moment of grief. Sure, we know he delayed getting there and all of those good things, but there was purpose in all of that. But I think it's powerful to see our Savior and recognize our Savior grieving alongside us, because so often we see him. I think about his interaction with the widow at Nain, where he raises the son from the dead, but he's not necessarily grieving alongside the mother in that moment. But what we see here is Jesus grieving alongside Mary and Martha, and grieving the death of his friend, and then tapping into his divine power in order to resurrect him as a kind of foreshadowing of what was going to happen for even in his life.
So let me ask you guys this: as African American men, do you think that it is a societal deal or a cultural deal or a man deal that will cause us to have this weakness thought when it comes to showing our emotions for the people that we love and following Jesus's example? Where does that come from?
Hawkins priming the pump.
What is it?
Pastor Hawkins, I think that's generational. You think about the brothers that came up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, some of the heartaches and the struggles that they had as far as racism, Jim Crow, and things of that nature. It was not crying or showing emotion was a sign of weakness. And the last thing you want to do for an African-American man is to show that type of weakness to the public. So you put on this facade that I'm strong, I can handle anything. I think as time has went on and we have grown as individuals and matured, our emotional IQ has gotten higher. We understand that that's not healthy. So I think you have to look at the context of time frame of what's going on. Today in 2021, it's okay for a brother to cry. But in 1963 or 1970, I can't say that. That would have been acceptable.
I think there's some element of kind of maybe nuanced off of what Reverend Greene was sharing. There's some element of not being able to flip the switch, right? That is to say that not that we don't have or haven't had emotions, or generations past haven't had emotion to share. It was just difficult to flip the switch, because out in the world, if I show that weakness, it's a sign. If I show that emotion, it's a sign that what the people who are otherizing me or marginalizing me or oppressing me, it's a sign that they've gotten me, that they've gotten to me, right? And then to be able to then to have to like come home and like kind of flip that switch. It can be, I think flipping a switch has proved challenging, and then it just becomes something that we don't show that same care and that same level of care down through the years. But I think that's a tide that's turning. I know, even with my own sons, like I'm trying to be deliberate about saying it's fine, cry all you want to cry, but then like let's figure out what the issue is. Let's get to the bottom. Shed your tears, but let's push through that as well. So that we can understand the issue and fix whatever it is that's bothering you, whether it's an emotional thing or some kind of, practical problem that we can solve. Like, let's work towards solving it. And so I think that's, again, to that progression that now society now in our community, we're recognizing that like showing that emotion is vital and it's actually strength. One of the things that I've heard recently that I thought was really powerful is that silk is just as strong as steel, and that we have to learn to be flexible, right? There's a different level of there is a strength in flexibility and of emotion to be able to go from crying to laughing to experience joy and all of these things and to express those things. There's strength in that, just as there's strength in steel and being, kind of steadfast and stoic and kind of the rock of everything.
I think another thought that comes to my mind, it's kind of alongside of that same point. It just has to do with the fact that Jesus placed a priority on relationship. And it sounds like an obvious thing, but when you've been pastoring for a minute, you can get caught up. I don't want to say caught up as if it's a bad thing, but there are so many things that fight for the energy of the pastor. Mm-hmm. And like right now, last year, especially last year, and still coming into this year, technology is gripping me, and now I know what I didn't know. I still don't know what I don't know, but I know what I didn't know. And now re-entry is gripping me. And in all of that, he placed a priority on relationship. I think that is incredible.
Yeah. I think that's a great point.
I think what is, to that point, what's really interesting is you find Jesus during his ministry, being transient, being mobile. And he even emphasizes that with his disciples when he's like, the foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Yeah. And just how the demands of his ministry did not allow him and afford him the creature comforts that we experience of being able to go back to the same place every single night. Mm-hmm. But one of those places where he was able to find that kind of home atmosphere and that kind of peace is at the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus in Bethany. Yeah. And so it is interesting that, because of that relationship that he shared with them, he had it made it easy for him to dwell with them. And even as he is approaching what he knows is going to ultimately end up being his death, he is able to leave the chaos of the city each night and walk the 2 miles back to Bethany to at least get a little bit of peace during this week.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a great point. Because there is that text in, I think it's in Matthew, that it makes note of that after he, after the whole temple scene in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 21, that at the end of that, like, I think it's verse 17, is like, he returned to Bethany for the night.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, really powerful and important, I think for us to consider about the places that we're able to find rest in the midst of. Pastor Hawkins summed it up. Like, we go from, kind of being concerned about technology and getting all of those things together, kind of from a pastoral perspective, to now, being concerned with reopening, and even for just, just a layperson individual that's just dealing with the transition and uncertainty and the challenging nature of the season we find ourselves in. Like, how do we find rest from, from the everyday toil of being, now being a virtual learning teacher, in the midst of all of the other responsibilities that we have, or having to not being able, where do we find rest from the worries of not being able to reach out to loved ones and family members that, I saw one of my friends posted, it was like, I was able to hug my parents for the first time in a year after, because we're both vaccinated. And it's just like, those are things that we, in the process take for granted, but really can become a real stressor thing because of the importance of relationships. So it's like,
here's the crazy thing, dude. Like, as you're saying that, here's what I'm thinking. Jesus obviously knew for a long time that he was going to Jerusalem. He was going to be condemned to death by the chief priests and the scribes. He was going to be delivered over to the Gentiles, who were going to mock him and crucify him. And then he was going to die. So, he knows this so clearly that he intentionally, voluntarily enters into Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So here's the crazy part, though. As you were talking about that, I was just like, the part that is crazy to me is that Jesus, one, was able to rest during that final week. But then the second piece is that Jesus knew he only had a couple days left.
Right.
And there was still a whole bunch of blind people, a whole bunch of lame people, a whole bunch of lepers, a whole bunch of people that hadn't received the message of the kingdom. It was a whole bunch of chaos and confusion and all of this other stuff going on. But Jesus is so clear about his purpose that rather than doing the things that he could do, he does the things that he must do.
Yeah.
And even in that, demonstrates for us the value of rest.
Going back to what Pastor Hawkins said, that moment also speaks of the relationship. He had such a good relationship with Martha and Mary that he felt safe to go into that place and rest. You all know, as leaders, it's hard to find a place where you can be yourself, where you don't have to be on. He was able to go there and just sit, eat, relax, and didn't have, like you said, everything was still waiting on him outside. He knew what was before him, but that gave him a place. And I think that speaks to the relationship. When you're in relationship with people and you feel like you can be yourself, it allows you to recharge and be able to tackle what you actually have to go out and do.
But here's the thing. Y'all just about got me fired up. just about got me fired up, because for a while I was under the impression that I had to find that outside of the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
that I couldn't find that within the congregation, that there's always got to be a line.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling y'all, that's changing for me. And it took time, and as Reverend Greene said, it took relationship, which kind of goes back, to the heart of ministry being relationship. Like if I always have to find rest outside of my congregation, now I'm saying that's a problem. But I didn't always think that way. And if I really pressed it, maybe it was understood. Maybe I heard somebody say it and I can't pinpoint it. But have you all struggled with where you find rest inside the congregation versus I got to go find rest out here somewhere, or I got to go to the cigar spot and where nobody knows me and be incognito, or I got to be on vacation and far away, or I got to talk to people who don't know nobody at the church where I serve. Like, how y'all dealing with that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna let y'all answer because I pastor a church, got a full-time job, 4 children, and a business. So I don't know what rest is.
Now, I was going to say that I think that's something that I absolutely agree with now as well. That I think it's important for us to be able to forge relationship within the context of a faith community that do allow us to rest without feeling like we got to go somewhere else to kind of let our hair proverbial or otherwise down, right? I have more hair this year, as a side note, than we did this last year. So I'm like, long hair don't care, maybe, but anyway. But in all seriousness, I remember the relationships that I developed in my first pastorate. Some of those relationships still maintain, and they began with the whole notion of, listen, you safe with us. Now I had to, you had to kind of test it a little bit, right? But once you discover that safety where you could just kind of be yourself, I mean, to the point where it's just like, listen, you got to be like, listen, this ain't Pastor Gilliam talking to you right now. This is Marvin. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got, and they're able to differentiate and give you that space as friends. It's so vital to have, because then you have that pocket and that space of people that are rooting for you. And to the point where I think Pastor Hawkins raised a question of like, where did you learn this or where did you hear this? I think some of that again, it's a cultural thing, right? That back in the day, the preacher came to the house to eat the big piece of chicken on Sunday, and that was about it. But it wasn't a whole lot of intermingling and interacting with those that were in the congregation. And if there was, it was always questions raised about what was going on, right? And so, and I remember even, hearing pastors and, hearing mentors say, hey, just be careful about the relationships that you have with those in the congregation and keeping them, you might want to find somewhere, else outside. And certainly, that's the case. You want to be safe and maintain integrity at all costs. But I think it's important for us to find those relationships in the context of community.
I think you make a good point. When we talk about relationships, it's different levels. Not everyone has to be, we going on vacation together, you watching my kid. It can be, we go out and have a meal after service, we have a good time, and that's a safe space right there. We're not saying that they have to be best friends, but I think it takes time. It has to be a mutual respect and understanding there before you can just become good friends. I think about at my first church where we were pastoring, we had a family. We had a brand new baby. He's now 7, and my wife's a minister, so we needed to be able to trust somebody to watch our 2 boys at the time. And this family it was just natural. It felt safe. They kept our kids safe. They protected our kids. They treated them like they were their own. But that took time. It just didn't happen overnight. And as the relationship went on, our tenure went on, we were able to see them more outside the church. And it became like friend, like family, essentially. But it takes time. And you have to, like Marvin said, like Pastor Gilliam said, you got to be careful, because you hear the horror stories of, a pastor got too comfortable with, and all that other stuff. So I think it just takes time.
So my father, in all of his wisdom, who is grading me on my dialogue this evening, corrected me and said, pastoring is a full-time job, so you have 2 full-time jobs. So I had to plug that in there and correct that. But I think one of the beautiful things about, what's so crazy, man, is just all that we're able to glean from Jesus' life, the little bit of it that is recorded in the Gospels. Yeah. And we see Jesus being able to find that amazing balance between it all, because Scripture regularly talks about Jesus having to leave everybody and go off to a solitary place to pray and to spend time with his Father and to just be away from everybody. And so we know that those times are necessary and valuable. But then, he also regularly pulls his disciples to the side and is spending quality and intimate time with those that he labors with, periodically. But then we also see in instances like this with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, Jesus being able to also build intimate relationships beyond those that he labors with, in a different context and different capacity. And then also, also having those times where he is with the larger group. And I think that we have to learn how to find rest in those various places. It's not like there's one situation or circumstance that provides rest for us. They all feed us and fuel us in different ways. Sometimes being alone is best, but sometimes it's not good to be alone. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you need to go pray. Sometimes you need to go crack some jokes with some friends, and I think just understanding that it all is valuable. And just like everything else that we're trying to juggle in this thing called life, it's about identifying that proper mixture for us. That helps us to do what Jesus did, which was to stay focused on his purpose and his destination, and be strong enough and connected enough to do what is necessary along the journey to achieve his goal.
So like here's what happened to me last year. We're talking about rest and connection and relationship, right? So right around June or so, my tank was starting to go down, right? It was getting close to empty. And I felt it. But I didn't do what Jesus did. I felt that the demands of the semi-crises of the pandemic required me to be on my post continuously.
Yeah.
And didn't take my normal things that I would normally do to rest. I would do a retreat twice a year, spring and fall. I would allow other people to preach from time to time, and I thought this is crisis time. This is not the time for the pastor to be away from the people. Technology is blowing my mind, and funerals, or all the stuff that we dealt with.
Yeah.
And I felt it, and I told my wife, and she said, "Well, what do you think you should do about it?" And I was like, "I don't know." I didn't have an answer, and I kept going. And next thing you know, a few months later, I'm functioning, but on the inside, I'm getting depressed, right?
Yeah.
And to the point where I knew I needed to do something about it, because I recognized it. Oh, I know what this is. This is depression. I'm familiar with this feeling. I need to go talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And the stigma of counseling I allowed to paralyze me. And I felt, especially as a pastor, I'm the one that's caring for everybody else. I shouldn't need, and I ain't do what Jesus did. And so when I finally went to go see the therapist who was an African American pastor who was certified, so I didn't have to explain a whole lot of background stuff. Like he got it from the get go. The reality is, in that instance, I was able to just take off the hats and connect. And coming out of that experience, I'm different than I used to be. I took the risk with people that I had developed relationship with within the congregation. I mean, I ain't sharing everything with everybody, y'all. I ain't crazy, but there are certain people that I've in one of them, I had to call up and say, can I just be Dwayne for a minute? This and this happened to your family, and I was your pastor, and I never got a chance to be me. And I just need to grieve with you. I just need to tell you how I was feeling about the death in your family.
Yeah.
And she was she reminds me of my mother, that kind of nurturing, and I'm telling y'all, had I done what Jesus did and took rest in the midst of the busiest, most focused week of his earthly ministry, I might have been able to minimize the depression. I might have been, but that pastoring mindset of I gotta be there. I can't go down. If I go down, everything goes down, and I can't see no counselor. I'm the pastor. All of that stuff got in the way. And what brought me out, truthfully, for the most part, was I started talking to people. I mean, I did some other stuff, with my self-care plan, and started doing the things that I knew to do before the pandemic, and that was part of it. But just sharing, like what Jesus did, with people that he could trust and places where he could rest in the midst, that's what started the healing.
Yeah.
For me. That's my story.
Appreciate that testimony.
That's my story.
Yeah. I probably needed that. Probably. I did. I just needed to hear that. I mean, yeah, because I think from, like you said, it's just been a lot. and carrying the weight of, wearing 1,000 hats, and actually, myself, Reverend Greene, we talked about this. And he's actually been, in his prepping for worship and all of that. And he probably saying, he's like, dude, he's like, dude, you need to, you're doing too much, man. I'm like, I gotta, just kind of that keep impressing thing. And then you just, and I've hit that wall a couple of times over the last year, where it's just been like, I just ain't got it. And, I've called up people. I'm like, look, I need you to preach this weekend. I need you to step up and, just come in and help. And a lot of it, man, pastors, I think in many regards have to be delivered from being Jesus, and from trying to be not from being Jesus, from trying to be the savior and not following the example of the savior.
Right.
Yeah, like Jesus already died on the cross. We don't necessarily gotta crucify ourselves again, for the sake of the work. And I've been working to find that value in rest and like retooling and stepping away because I can feel it, myself. Like my creativity gets low. It's like, all right, I need to pull back.
I think it's two misconceptions that we have to dispel. And the first one is the pastor has to do everything. And the second one is you do need a therapist.
Absolutely.
For the things that we encounter and hear and have to deal with, you need a therapist. Someone that's not in your congregation so you can be free and let it all out, because that's healing. Like you said, Pastor Hawkins, talking to people, that is healing for us. So I'm assuming you may be an extrovert, and I know, like me, talking to people, being around people energizes me. So I need that energy. Mm-hmm. So stop trying to do it all by ourselves, and then realize that it's okay to have a therapist. That's safe. And to Pastor Gilliam's point, I was at the service when I'm like, wait, hey man, you doing too much. Slow down. Like, I'm like, hey man, can I get you some water or something? Like, let me help you. Because it's not realistic. Because you gotta think, at the end of the day, we're husbands, we're fathers, we own businesses, we do it. God has blessed us with a lot of gifts and talents, and we want to be able to use them all and not burn ourselves out on that 10% of who God has called us to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but on the flip side, like nobody knew that thing was not going to be 8 weeks of going hard.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that we had to pace ourselves for the long game.
Right. We'll be back in June. It'll be no problem.
Yeah. This was temporary, and I heard some people say that.
Yeah,
we'll be back in June. We'll be back in July. So the other side of that was, man, I had many conversations with pastors. It wasn't until June, July when they started letting associates preach.
Yeah.
Thinking that this was not going to be long term. And if it's not going to be long term, I need to be there and I can rest when this thing dies down.
Yeah.
And it never happened.
Still.
Right. It never happened. And I'm gonna speak for Jonathan by way of speaking for myself. Like there are some times, and I'm sure the both of y'all feel this way too, because of what the Lord has blessed you with, the skills, the talents, and the abilities, and the ability to learn quickly. Sometimes, literally, nobody else had the skill to do this. I ain't saying that's an excuse. I'm just saying all of those things were part of
part of just management
last year.
Yeah, part of management.
But we know better now.
Yeah.
We got to do better.
Yeah,
this is a long game.
Yeah.
which it would, and it's interesting that you end on with that phrase, because just thinking about this final week of Jesus's ministry isn't the final week of Jesus's ministry.
Wow.
Even in that even during Holy Week, Jesus is still playing the long game.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, man, like he's still thinking about focusing on prepping the disciples and getting them ready and recognizing, yeah, I'm about to go through this hellish moment. But it's still work that I got to get done on the other side. And so he's able to take the time. I was reading, I was looking at John 12, and he's there 6 days before the Passover, taking a rest in Bethany. I think in Mark, it has him in the middle of Holy Week in Bethany, relaxing and reclining at a dinner.
But isn't that the ministry of Jesus, though? Like,
yeah.
He's sleeping in the boat in the middle of the storm while everybody else is freaking about, and scared they're gonna die. Like, yeah. And it's just like, how do we become so very clear about our reason for being, that we know that even in the middle of the chaos, if it ain't our time, it ain't our time.
Yeah.
He knew so clearly what he had to do and how he was going to have to do it, that he knew that he could be on a boat in the middle of the storm, but the storm wasn't what was going to take him out.
Yeah.
Because the storm wasn't that mechanism that was intended to help him to fulfill his purpose. And I think let me speak for myself. I feel like if I was clearer about exactly what God was trying to do, I probably wouldn't be distracted and feel like I have to run so hard in this moment, because if I don't get it done, it ain't gonna be done.
The tyranny of the urgent.
You just said purpose. Jesus understood his purpose. That goes to us. Once we have a clear understanding of our purpose, we can function different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's for everybody. Mm-hmm. That's for everybody. Pastors are not. Like, the more clarity you have, the more easily you're able to prioritize what's important.
This reminds me of, if you all ever heard any of the documentaries by the late great Kobe Bryant, he talked about, he understood his purpose from day one. They would say, Kobe never went out, he was never social. In all his interviews, he was saying, my purpose was to win a championship. That was my purpose. That's the only thing I focused on. And so that resonates when you think about what, I'm not saying comparing him to Jesus, but if you think about Jesus' ministry, he understood his purpose. He knew what was going to happen. Yet and still, he still prepared and did the things necessary.
Yeah, Kobe was really clear. After he passed last year, I spent like a month just like everything I could find and listen to he was super clear about basketball, and then even in life after basketball. He was super clear about the moves he was making and the impact he was aiming for in business, with his family, and all of that. Like, he was super clear. And that is, I think that's a level of clarity that that escapes most people. And then cause us to being consumed into things that aren't necessarily connected to the specific thing or things that we are called to, or the things that come out of the natural core of who we're created to be.
There's a paradox that exists in a lot of people. And purpose can help us to resolve it. The things that propel us forward are the very things that can cause us to crash.
Good. Somebody type that. Put it in
our willingness to serve.
That's good.
To give the Lord our all. Whatever your own strength finders, or whatever those those things that God has given you that has been used for his glory to propel you forward are the very same things, if you're not careful, that'll be your downfall.
Right.
And so knowing when to turn it on and when to turn it off is connected to a true understanding of purpose and this whole notion of process versus results and who's responsible for what.
Mm-hmm.
You explaining Martha, and Martha
Mm-hmm.
and her, she was exceptional in hospitality.
Right,
She was fixing the meal, and she went to Jesus and was like, "Tell Mary to get up. She's sitting down there chilling." And she missed it, that she missed being in the presence of Jesus because she was so focused on these details of making sure the food was done and everybody was satisfied. And to your point, many times we can't get distracted by those little things that really don't have a big impact. And we missed the moment. She missed the moment of being able to sit at Jesus' feet with her sister and glean from him because she was so focused on the meal,
Yeah.
which she was probably good at.
Right.
Well, Martha could throw down.
Yeah.
That's probably
That's why Jesus kept going back to the house.
She was Baptist, y'all. She was
He
Baptist.
was like, she's gonna be my friend. Keep them close.
We got about a little over 10 minutes to land this bird. One thing I wanted to throw out there to you guys that I thought about was, taking into consideration Jesus being very intentional about everything that he does, and him spending time with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, during those first couple of evenings of his last week. I think it is it? How could you on Facebook? You gave us the technology disclaimer earlier, so all is forgiven. But
trying to do too much. I'm trying to do too much.
But I just wonder. I wonder with Jesus knowing. I mean, so let me see how I can say this I can give you the condensed version. I think sometimes when we look at Jesus, we forget we get so wrapped up in the godliness of Jesus that we forget about the humanity of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we take this whole idea of Jesus knowing for an extended period of time that he is going to Jerusalem to be killed, a brutal death. And somehow like he was just cool with that. And that it didn't create a sense of anxiety or a weight that he walks within, that he carries with him. And so I wonder, and this is just total speculation, but I wonder if Jesus finds comfort in Mary, Martha, and Lazarus's presence during his final days, not only because of the relationship that they have, but because every time he looks at Lazarus, he finds a measure of reassurance that even though he's going to die, God is going to raise him back up. And so every time he looks at Lazarus, it's a reminder that everything is going to be okay.
That's good.
Because a lot of times when I think about Jesus in that last week, it's just like, man, how's this dude so amazing? Like, how are you going through this? And and it's really just like as if he's void of emotion. But clearly, when he gets to Gethsemane, I mean, Gethsemane is the boiling point. Yeah. When all of that stuff bubbles up on the inside and it finally comes out in a public way, and we finally get to peek behind the curtain of what's been going on in Jesus. Yeah. And I just wondered like how that was building in him up until that point. But then, having a conversation with Lazarus.
Yeah.
And being like, this dude won't just dead. Like he was dead. He was 4 day dead. He was so dead that, the spirit was gone. Like it had hovered for 3 days, but that 4th day it was gone.
It was out of it.
But here he is laughing, talking, eating Martha's cooking, and chilling and having conversation. And I think that I just wonder, like in my head visually, I just kind of see everybody sitting around chilling, and Jesus just kind of sitting there, thinking like, man, it's almost time. But then he looks at Lazarus and he's like, my father got me, yo.
That's interesting, particularly because John has that as like the 7th. I think that's the 7th sign before like Holy Week in the way that John frames the gospel. So that's that 7, John's, kind of particular about how he puts the gospel together with the I am statements, with signs and all of that. And I think that's a great point. Like to think about seeing Lazarus like every night, going back to Bethany, seeing Lazarus. Okay, it's gonna be all right. And that even Jesus, perhaps Jesus even needed that reassurance moving through the week. That yes, everything was gonna be all right. And that's that human side. Like we all seek that and desire that reassurance, like, this is hard. But having that example to look to of somebody who is enduring, who has endured and overcome what we are currently or about to face is faith building for us.
Yeah.
It says, if they made it, right, then I know the possibility is there that I will be on the other side of it as well. And that all will be well, and I will be better for it. As well.
Because it's one thing to say you the resurrection and the life when you getting everybody else up.
Right.
When it's your turn.
Yeah. Yeah. That is good.
We have 5 minutes, gentlemen.
That is good. That is good. I'll pass on closing thoughts to our guest first.
I guess I can go since I'm the newbie. You said something. It was a lot that was said tonight, but Jesus wept. When you look at that verse, we really see the humanity of Jesus. We see how he mourns just like you and I. And to your point about seeing Lazarus, knowing what's about to happen, it's a reminder. I remember when I was pledging the best fraternity in the world, Alpha Phi fraternity. When I look at some of the people that went before me, no disrespect, I just felt like I know I can do this. I can make this happen. And so I think that's what Lazarus, it was just a reminder of comfort that, hey, I can overcome this. This, I will be fine. And then you speak to the relationships of Martha and Mary. I would imagine it felt like home. It was a safe space where Jesus didn't have to look over his shoulder. He wasn't worried about someone coming there. He can relax, and it gave him ability to charge. And it's something for us as clergy, as leaders, just to know that we still have to be able to take intentional rest. We can't run. You can't run a sprint. This is a marathon that we on. It doesn't matter how fast we come out. It's about, are you going to still be in the race? And you speak to the pandemic. Here we are coming up on 13 months of a pandemic. And we're hopefully we'll be back in the building soon, but we'll never go back to where it used to be. And so we have to be able to still be in the race. Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage you all, you brothers in particular, take your time. You can't do it all in one day. It didn't get like that in one day, so you can't fix it in one day. Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you, man.
For sure.
I think for me, is my current striving to be like Jesus in the fact of being more fully human in ministry and at rest. Yeah, Jonathan was talking about the humanity of Jesus showing up, and the humanity in his expression, in his relationship, and the wisdom and humanity of rest while still going to Calvary. Being whole and authentic requires that we not be out of balance. And for me, it's the striving to be more authentically human in the ministry, which is how I present myself to the people, which is bigger than just resting. It's how I am at work as well. Just embracing humanity in ministry, and the need to make sure that I have Mary, Martha, and Lazarus in my life.
I think I would say what kind of sticks out to me from this conversation tonight is, and gratefully enough, I've had lots of conversations with Pastor Hawkins and with Marvin and with my dad just through this pandemic period, and embraced the charge to release perfectionism, and to to delegate, to share the load, leave room for God to do what only God can do. But I think my challenge and my charge from tonight is to evaluate and reassess my understanding of rest and where I rest, and just remembering that rest doesn't always have to mean isolation. And that even in rest, I can still be connecting and communing, even in my rest. Yeah.
It's rest in the midst of chaos. I mean, I think, just kind of reiterating a lot of what's already been said. For me, it's really, committing to playing the long game. I was having kind of have some meditative thoughts earlier today about how long is this sustainable, and what is the vision that I'm working towards personally, but also as a lead in the congregation, what is the vision that we're working towards? And I'm one that can admit that sometimes I have an impatience about me, that particularly when it comes to the work, that I'm like, let's go, let's get it done. Let's get it done. Like, what's the hold up, right? But recognizing that is a distraction at the end of the day. That even accomplishing the work can become the distraction. And so learning how to recognize that to rest, that God's got me where God desires for me to be, good, bad, whatever, but that I can still find these moments of peace and these moments of rest and these seasons and these places of rest in the midst of uncertainty and chaos and challenging circumstances that I see coming, and some and certainly because I'm not Jesus, that I don't see coming, right? So just learning the rest is, has been kind of the push over the last few months for me. And certainly this conversation has reiterated and caused me to recommit myself to that.
Well, praise the Lord. This has been an enjoyable conversation, and there is no doubt within me that we could go for another hour and a half. But we're not going to.
Not this year.
Man, listen. But brothers, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We definitely want to make sure that people are able to stay in contact with you. So please take a moment just to share with everyone, your church information, church website, where they can follow you on social media, all of that good stuff, so that they can stay in contact with you and continue to follow you on your journey.
Antioch Omaha is our church's Facebook page, website. We are AntiochOmaha.org, DAH Consulting.
You can find me on Instagram at Pierre Greene 12. That's Pierre PIERREGREENE 12 on Instagram. Pierre Greene 12.
Awesome sauce. Well, thank you brothers for your contributions to tonight's dialogue. For those of you that are joining us all over social media, we want to thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Thank you for your comments there in the chat throughout the dialogue, and it's good to know that this was a blessing not only to us but also to you as well. We will be back tomorrow night at the same time, same place, and so definitely we look forward to seeing you. We'll have 2 new friends with us tomorrow night. And we'll continue tomorrow's conversation. Marvin, you want to tell them who we're going to be talking about tomorrow?
Tomorrow we are talking about tomorrow. Forgot that quick. We're talking about tomorrow's religious leaders, I believe.
Yep.
Pharisees, Sadducees, Caiaphas, high priest. We see a lot of interaction in the Gospels between Jesus and in these groups and these individuals. It certainly comes to a head during Holy Week. So we'll talk about their role and see what we can discover from their part into play in this narrative of Holy Week and the ministry of Jesus.
All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us tonight for our Holy Week meditations. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. And if tonight was a blessing, be sure to share with somebody else and invite them to the conversation. We'll be here each night at 7:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Central, for ongoing dialogue this week as we continue to consider the supporting cast of characters along Jesus's journey to the cross. We love you. God bless you. And as always, live each day on purpose.
Hey, there's no limit to what God can do. We love you. There's nothing you can do about it. Believe bigger.
Have a great night.
All right.